What would you do if, on Christmas Eve, your life changed forever because of a simple but profound gesture? That's the question that echoes in my mind as I remember that magical, transformative night. It was a cold, bright night, where lights twinkled in the trees and the smell of fresh pine hung in the air. I, a nurse named Sarah, was working in a busy hospital, caring for patients who, like me, were facing their own battles. That Christmas Eve, I met a man who would change my life forever. He was a millionaire, but it wasn't just his wealth that defined him. There was a deep sadness in his eyes that intrigued me. His name was Thomas, and as I treated him, I realized his pain went far beyond any physical injury. We talked about dreams and hopes, and I shared my desire to one day open a clinic that could help people like us who struggle with life's difficulties. Thomas listened intently, and in a moment of vulnerability, he made me a promise. "I will help you make this dream come true, Sarah. Just believe." The next day, I woke up to an unexpected gift. What I didn't know was that this gift would come with a high price, leaving me in tears. What started as a gesture of kindness turned into an emotional challenge I could never have imagined. From this turn of events, my life would become a roller coaster of emotions, where I would need to confront not only my own fears, but also the consequences of the choices I made. As I walked through the hospital hallways, the Christmas lights twinkled, but nothing seemed as bright as the hope that Thomas had kindled in my heart. I remember how the nurses talked about the rich patients who passed by, but I always knew Thomas was different. He didn't care about his status. He was there, vulnerable, just like any of us. His words still resonated in my mind. Life is about choices, Sarah. Each of them can take us down a path we didn't expect. That dream of opening a clinic seemed like a lighthouse in the midst of a storm. I often found myself alone in my thoughts, reflecting on my difficulties and the barriers I would have to overcome. The difficult childhood and trauma I carried felt heavy on my heart, but the idea of helping others gave me strength. So, every interaction with patients and colleagues made me realize that I needed courage to move forward. One night, as we were talking about our dreams, my friend and fellow nurse, Emily, said to me, "You are stronger than you know, Sarah. Never underestimate the power you have to change lives." Those words resonated with me, and I remembered every patient I had treated, every smile I had helped them recover. I was not alone on this journey. There were people around me who supported me, even when the difficulties seemed insurmountable. The connection with Thomas deepened as we shared our hopes and fears. He would tell me about the challenges of his life as a millionaire, about the pressure and loneliness that came with his wealth. Our moments together became precious, and I realized he, too, was searching for something he couldn't buy: purpose and true human connection. However, the upcoming twist would teach me that life is full of surprises. When the gift Thomas had left me revealed itself, I found myself surrounded by tears. What seemed like a gesture of generosity would become a dilemma that would force me to reconsider not just my dream, but my entire understanding of love, friendship, and sacrifice. That day would change not only my life, but Thomas's as well, in ways I could never have imagined. And so, I found myself facing a new beginning where personal overcoming, starting over, and the value of life lessons would become central themes in my journey. What I didn't know was that this story was just beginning, and that every choice, every tear, and every smile would shape the path I was about to take. That Christmas Eve, while caring for Thomas, I realized my life was about to change. He wasn't just a patient. He became a friend, a confidant. With each conversation, I felt he saw beyond my nurse uniform. He understood the struggles I faced, and it left me vulnerable in ways I didn't expect. The glow in the Christmas lights seemed to dim as I thought about my own reality. Doubts began to accumulate in my mind, like heavy clouds, and I wondered if I really had the courage to follow my dream. And then, the next morning arrived, bringing with it an unexpected gift. It was a check, and not just any check. The amount was enough to open the clinic I always dreamed of. However, when holding it in my hands, the joy was quickly overshadowed by a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't know how to feel. It was a beautiful gesture, but also a burden. Thomas was betting on me, and that put me in an uncomfortable position. Could I really honor that offer? And what did this mean for our friendship? As I tried to process all of this, I talked to Emily, my longtime friend. I considered her a sister, always ready to listen to me. "Are you sure you want to accept this, Sarah?" she asked, her eyes concerned. "What if it changes the way you see yourself? What about the way others see you?" His words resonated with me. What started as an opportunity now turned into a source of doubt. "I just want to help people, I replied, my voice sounding weaker than I intended. "But what if I fail? What if I can't maintain the clinic? What if this affects my relationship with Thomas?" The fear of failure was like a weight on my chest, and I didn't know how to get rid of it. Over the next few days, insecurity continued to haunt me. I observed interactions between patients and doctors, noticing how expectations and pressures could change the dynamics of any relationship. With every smile I saw, there was a shadow of doubt hanging over me. Would I be ready to deal with all of this? The idea of opening a clinic seemed increasingly distant, like a star that was fading in the sky. Thomas, on the other hand, seemed increasingly distant. He was dealing with his own issues, and I didn't know how to approach him without seeming like I was pressuring him. There was a fine line between friendship and dependence, and I didn't want to cross it. One night, after a long day of work, I decided to visit him. When I arrived at his house, I realized that he was in a similar state to me. He looked at me with a tired smile, but there was something else in his gaze, a sadness that seemed deep and familiar. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft, "how are you handling all this?" The question took me by surprise. I had hoped to be the counselor, but at that moment, it seemed like he also needed someone to vent to. And so, the conversation flowed. I talked about my insecurities, about how small I felt compared to the greatness of his offer. He listened to me attentively, and when I finished, he took a deep breath. "You know, I have my insecurities too," he confessed. "Wealth doesn't bring happiness, and I often feel like people only approach me because of what I have. When you told me about your dream, I saw a light in you that I don't find in many places, and that made me want to help. But now, I see that perhaps I am projecting my own hopes onto you." His words hit me like a wave. I was not just a nurse, but someone he saw as a chance to rediscover the human connection he so desperately sought. However, this also reinforced my doubts. Could I really be that person? Could I open a clinic and at the same time maintain a healthy friendship with someone who was investing so much in me? As the night progressed, the conversations became deeper. Thomas talked about the challenges he faced in the business world, and I realized that behind the wealth was a man who was also struggling to find purpose. This made me reflect on my own life. Being a nurse was rewarding, but the idea of opening a clinic was a dream I couldn't let go of. However, the pressure to succeed and the possibility of failure left me paralyzed. In the days that followed, interactions at the hospital were filled with new tensions. I saw it in every patient I treated, in every smile I tried to recover. The insecurities grew every day, and I wondered if I could be the change I wanted to see. What began as a gesture of generosity turned into a mirror that reflected my flaws and my hopes. I needed to confront not just doubt, but the truth about what I really wanted and who I was. The pressure increased as those around me began to notice my hesitation. Emily, ever perceptive, began to question my intentions. "You're not doing this for yourself, are you?" she asked in a tone that mixed concern and curiosity. "Are you just trying to please Thomas?" His words were like a slap in the face. Was I really doing this for me? Or was it just a way to repay his generosity? Confusion reigned in my heart. And so, I found myself in a cycle of doubts and uncertainties, questioning every step I took. Life was turning into a delicate dance between following my dreams and maintaining the relationships I valued. I needed to find a balance, but the task seemed increasingly difficult. What I didn't know was that this journey would take me to a place of self-discovery and growth that I never imagined. The story was just beginning, and every challenge he faced was an opportunity to grow and learn, even if it meant confronting pain and uncertainty. In the following days, doubts became a constant in my life. Each morning, when I woke up, I found myself struggling to find motivation. The check Thomas gave me, which was supposed to be a symbol of hope, now weighed in my hands like an anchor. The idea of opening a clinic was appealing, but the responsibility that came with it was terrifying. I wondered if I could actually do this. The fear of failing and disappointing Thomas consumed me. One afternoon, while organizing things at the hospital, I received a message from Thomas. He wanted to meet to discuss the clinic's proposal. The heart raced. I thought he might be changing his mind, and that made me nervous. What if he regretted investing in me? The idea made me uneasy. When I arrived at the cafe, I saw Thomas sitting at a table in the back, looking thoughtful. He looked at me and, instead of the smile he usually had, his face was marked with concern. "Hi, Sarah," he said, his voice deeper than usual. "We need to talk about what you're going to do with the check." I sat down, and the conversation began to flow, but tension hung in the air. "I don't know if I can accept this," I confessed, feeling the words come out like an outburst. The idea of opening a clinic scares me. What if I fail? What if this ends our friendship? Thomas sighed, and a heavy silence fell between us. "I never wanted you to feel this way," he replied. "I just wanted to help. You are a great nurse, and I see potential in you that goes beyond that." His words were a balm, but I couldn't shake my own insecurities. What he saw in me was not something I saw. In the following days, the weight of the decision became unbearable. I spent hours thinking about what to do, and the pressure only increased. Working at the hospital became a struggle. I could barely concentrate. What should have been a fulfilling vocation now became a battleground against my own uncertainties. Each patient I treated reminded me of what was at stake, the chance to open a practice and the possibility of failure. The conversation with Emily also echoed in my mind. She was right to be worried. I started to realize that I was moving away from her as well as other friends. Social life was disappearing as I felt guilty for not living up to the expectations I had created. And with each passing day, the loneliness increased. One day, while walking home after a long shift, I saw a group of children playing in the street. They laughed and ran, completely carefree. A feeling of nostalgia came over me, reminding me of simpler times when I dreamed of helping people without that pressure. I stopped for a moment, watching them. The purity of that joy contrasted with the weight I was carrying. I wanted to find that joy again, but I didn't know how. The pressure behind Thomas's offer also began to get to him. He became more and more reserved, and I noticed his sadness intensifying. What was once a light friendship between us now became a minefield. Every time we tried to discuss the clinic, the conversation ended up turning into a tense silence. I didn't know how to deal with it. The fear of messing up paralyzed me. Then one day I got a call from an old college friend. He was organizing a fundraiser for a local health clinic and wanted me to participate. At first, I was hesitant, but something inside me told me it was an opportunity to see what it really meant to work in a clinic. I could watch, learn, and maybe find some of the confidence I was missing. When I arrived at the event, the atmosphere was vibrant, full of people sharing inspiring stories. It made me think about how the work I wanted to do could impact lives. But at the same time, I saw the pressure and struggle these people faced, and it reminded me how success is not guaranteed. Every tear and every smile told a story of resilience, and I wondered if I was really ready for this. As I walked through the event, I saw Thomas in a corner, talking to some friends. He seemed distant, and the sight of him made me feel a sharp pain. I needed to talk to him, but the idea of broaching the subject of the clinic made me even more anxious. However, when our eyes met, something inside me broke. I could no longer ignore the truth. I needed to be honest. "Thomas," I called, approaching him. "We can talk." He waved, and we moved away from the noise a little. "I don't know what to do," I began, voice shaking. "I feel like I'm letting you down, but opening a clinic seems like such a distant dream right now. I don't want this to affect our friendship." He looked deeply into my eyes as if he was seeing beyond my surface. "Sarah, I never expected you to have all the answers now," he said, with a calmness I needed to hear. "I just want you to know that whatever you decide, I'm here to support you. Your happiness is what matters to me." Tears came without warning, and I realized I was holding all of this alone. The pressure I felt wasn't just about the clinic, but about the need to be perfect. Thomas reminded me that life was not about being perfect, but about being true. And at that moment, I realized that, even with all the uncertainty, I still had the ability to dream. The pressure began to dissipate, and I saw a light at the end of the tunnel. That night, I returned home with a new understanding. The journey would not be easy, but the beauty was in the struggle. I was willing to face my fears, explore what it meant to open a practice, and most of all, maintain the friendship I valued so much. The path ahead was full of challenges, but for the first time, I felt like I was ready to face them. When Thomas told me that my happiness was what mattered, something inside me changed. The pressure I had placed on my shoulders, the expectation to be perfect, began to dissipate like a mist at dawn. Tears that were once a sign of weakness have now become a symbol of liberation. I realized I wasn't alone on this journey. Thomas was there, not just as an investor, but as a genuine friend who cared about me. We sat on a bench further away from the event, where the lively music and happy conversations seemed like a distant echo. The soft evening light illuminated his face, and in that moment, I felt a little braver. "I don't want you to regret investing in me," I said, voice still shaking. "I don't know if I'm capable of doing this. The idea of opening a clinic seems so far away, so impossible." He sighed, and I could see the concern in his eyes. "Sarah, you don't have to be perfect. We all have uncertainties, and what you are feeling is normal. The important thing is that you don't give up on yourself. You already make a difference in people's lives every day. Think about it." His words echoed in my mind. I had always focused on what it took to be successful, but I had never stopped to consider the impact I was already making on the lives of others. With each patient I saw, I carried a piece of their stories, their hopes, and their pains. And suddenly, I found myself reflecting on this, realizing that true success wasn't just in opening a clinic full of patients, but in making a difference, even if on a smaller scale. The conversation flowed, and the tension that had surrounded us began to dissipate. Thomas wasn't just supporting me, he was challenging me to see the potential I couldn't see. He reminded me of how I had started my career, full of dreams and hopes, and how I had helped so many people without even realizing it. There was something powerful about knowing that the value of my work was not measured by a check or a clinic, but by each life I touched. As the night progressed, I realized that my outlook on life was changing. The fear of failure was still there, but now I saw it as a part of the process. I didn't need to have all the answers. I just needed to take the first step. The fundraiser became not just a learning opportunity, but a catalyst for a new perspective. I was beginning to understand that every mistake, every stumble was a chance for growth, an opportunity to learn more about myself and what it really meant to be a nurse. When I returned home that night, the weight I was carrying felt lighter. The decision to open the clinic still hung over me, but now it wasn't an overwhelming obligation. It was a choice, an opportunity. The idea of failing no longer paralyzed me, but drove me to act. I knew that regardless of the outcome, I had Thomas's support and, more importantly, I had myself. In the days that followed, I allowed myself to dream again. I started making notes about what I wanted to include in the clinic, how I could structure the services and the environment. What once seemed like a distant dream now seemed like a tangible possibility. I started talking to colleagues about what worked and what didn't work in their practices. Every conversation, every idea I wrote down brought a new level of motivation. I was rediscovering the joy of helping people, of being part of their lives at such a delicate time. One afternoon, while organizing an informal meeting with other nurses to discuss ideas, I realized I was surrounded by a group of passionate and dedicated people. At that moment, I realized that I was not alone on this journey. There was a supportive community around me, people who also wanted to make a difference. This connection gave me new energy and a sense of belonging that I hadn't felt in a long time. When I met Thomas again, I was able to share my new perspective with him. I want to do this. I want to open the clinic, but now I know I'm not doing it just for you or me. I want to do this for the community, for people who need care and support. I want it to be a place where people feel safe and welcome. Thomas's eyes lit up with pride, and I knew that no matter what happened, I was on the right path. I would still face challenges and uncertainty, but now I had a clearer vision of what it meant to truly help others. The fear didn't go away, but I learned to dance with it, to use it as a source of motivation rather than an obstacle. Life wasn't about being perfect. It was about being true, about embracing the journey, with all its twists and turns and surprises. And so, I prepared to take the next step, knowing that no matter what the future held, I had the courage to move forward. I was ready to make that dream a reality, and most importantly, I was ready to be the professional and friend I always wanted to be. In the days following that life-changing conversation with Thomas, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of opening the clinic pulsed in my mind, but at the same time, a new wave of doubts began to infiltrate my consciousness. I had made a decision, but what if I failed? What if Thomas's support wasn't enough? These questions circulated incessantly, like shadows that insisted on following me. One night, as I was trying to organize my thoughts in a notebook, writing and crossing out ideas, frustration got the better of me. I looked at the ceiling, searching for an answer in the void. Why is it so difficult? I muttered to myself. I felt a lump forming in my throat, and as if on impulse, I picked up my cell phone and sent a message to Thomas. Asterisk, can we talk? I'm feeling a little lost. Asterisk. He responded quickly, suggesting we meet at the cafe we used to frequent. As I walked there, each step felt heavier than the last. Insecurity wrapped around me like a cloak, and I wondered if I had the courage to share my doubts. When I entered the cafe, I spotted Thomas sitting at a table near the window, and his welcoming smile immediately gave me a bit of comfort. Hi, Sarah. I'm glad you came, he said, in his warm way. I sat down, and the conversation started to flow, but I soon realized that the anxiety was still present. Thomas, I'm trying to deal with the idea of opening the clinic, but I can't stop thinking about the things that could go wrong. What if I don't make it? What if my plans don't work? He looked at me with understanding. It's normal to feel this way, Sarah. We all have fears. Remember that the journey is not perfect. You will face challenges, and that doesn't mean you're not capable. What matters is how you deal with these challenges. You have had difficulties before and overcame them. What are you going to do now? His words resonated with me. I had faced difficulties before, and I had always found a way to move forward. But at the same time, I was aware that opening the clinic was different. It was a new level of responsibility, something that could have a real impact on people's lives. What if I can't meet expectations? I said, barely able to contain the vulnerability in my voice. What if you discover that this is exactly what you were born to do? Thomas replied, his gaze steady. He continued, you are not alone. You have a team around you, people who believe in you and are willing to support you. And, most importantly, you have the ability to learn from your mistakes. Every failure is a lesson. With each word, I felt the weight of my insecurities beginning to lift, albeit slowly. The conversation turned into a dialogue about what I really wanted. I was able to express my fears and insecurities, and in return, I received advice and support. Thomas wasn't just an investor, he had become a mentor and a friend. Over the next few days, I went back to working on my notes. I started exploring the areas that interested me most for the clinic. But even so, the internal struggle continued. In a meeting with colleagues, I shared my vision for the clinic, and although the enthusiasm was there, a part of me still felt doubtful. When a coworker, Lidisha, mentioned a mistake she had made in her own practice, something inside me lit up. Lidisha, how did you deal with this? How did you find the strength to start over? She smiled, a gleam of understanding in her eyes. I learned that mistakes are just part of the process. Each of them taught me something new. The important thing is not to let yourself be paralyzed. If you love what you do, you will find the energy to keep going, even when things get difficult. These conversations helped me see that I was not alone. My colleagues also faced challenges, and each had their own story of overcoming them. The connection I made with them strengthened my resolve. I began to realize that even when the journey seemed daunting, I had a support network around me. Thomas and I continued to meet regularly, and with each conversation, my spirit was renewed. One day, as we were discussing possible locations for the clinic, he asked me a question that made me think deeply. Sarah, what do you hope people feel when they walk into your clinic? What is the feeling you want to convey? The answer came out of me almost instantly. I want them to feel safe, welcomed. I want them to know they are in a place where their voices are heard, where their struggles are recognized. This made me realize that my motivation was not just about professional success, but about the impact I could have on people's lives. As time passed, I began to see the emotional consequences of this turning point. I wasn't just dealing with the challenges of opening a practice, I was facing a new version of myself. A version that accepted vulnerability, that understood that fear was part of growth. I was learning to trust myself and value the experiences that shaped my journey. Conversations with Thomas and my colleagues became fundamental. Each of them, with their stories and struggles, reminded me that life is a series of ups and downs, and that true resilience lies not in avoiding challenges, but in facing them with courage. This new perspective was changing not only the way I viewed my career, but also the way I related to the people around me. One sunny afternoon, while walking through a park, I noticed how little things started to bring joy. A child's laughter, the light breeze that caressed my face, everything seemed more vibrant. I was beginning to understand that life wasn't about achieving big milestones, but about finding beauty in the small, daily victories. And so, with every step I took towards my dream, I felt a little stronger. The journey was still full of uncertainties, but now I was willing to embrace each one. I was ready to turn my vision into reality, confident that, regardless of the outcome, I had found a new way of living and being. I had the courage to move forward, and that in itself was a victory. In the days following that life-changing conversation with Thomas, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of opening the clinic pulsed in my mind, but at the same time, a new wave of doubts began to infiltrate my consciousness. I had made a decision, but what if I failed? What if Thomas's support wasn't enough? These questions circulated incessantly, like shadows that insisted on following me. One night, as I was trying to organize my thoughts in a notebook, writing and crossing out ideas, frustration got the better of me. I looked at the ceiling, searching for an answer in the void. Why is it so difficult? I muttered to myself. I felt a lump forming in my throat and, as if on impulse, I grabbed my cell phone and texted Thomas, "Can we talk? I'm feeling a little lost." He responded quickly, suggesting we meet at the cafe we used to frequent. As I walked there, each step felt heavier than the last. Insecurity wrapped around me like a cloak, and I wondered if I had the courage to share my doubts. When I entered the cafe, I spotted Thomas sitting at a table near the window, and his welcoming smile immediately gave me a bit of comfort. "Hi, Sarah. I'm glad you came," he said, in his warm way. I sat down, and the conversation started to flow, but I soon realized that the anxiety was still present. "Thomas, I'm trying to deal with the idea of opening the clinic, but I can't stop thinking about the things that could go wrong. What if I don't succeed? What if my plans don't work?" He looked at me with understanding. "It's normal to feel this way, Sarah. We all have fears. Remember that the journey isn't perfect. You will face challenges, and that doesn't mean you can't do it. What matters is how you handle those challenges. You've had difficulties before, and you've overcome them. What are you going to do now?" His words resonated with me. I had faced difficulties before, and I had always found a way to move forward. But at the same time, I was aware that opening the clinic was different. It was a new level of responsibility, something that could have a real impact on people's lives. "What if I can't meet expectations?" I said, barely able to contain the vulnerability in my voice. "What if you discover that this is exactly what you were born to do?" Thomas replied, his gaze steady. He continued, "You are not alone. You have a team around you, people who believe in you and are willing to support you. And, most importantly, you have the ability to learn from your mistakes. Every failure is a lesson." With each word, I felt the weight of my insecurities beginning to lift, albeit slowly. The conversation turned into a dialogue about what I really wanted. I was able to express my fears and insecurities, and in return, I received advice and support. Thomas wasn't just an investor, he had become a mentor and a friend. Over the next few days, I went back to working on my notes. I started exploring the areas that interested me most for the clinic. But even so, the internal struggle continued. In a meeting with colleagues, I shared my vision for the clinic, and although the enthusiasm was there, a part of me still felt doubtful. When a coworker, Lidisha, mentioned a mistake she had made in her own practice, something inside me lit up. Lidisha, how did you deal with this? How did you find the strength to start over? She smiled, a gleam of understanding in her eyes. I learned that mistakes are just part of the process. Each of them taught me something new. The important thing is not to let yourself be paralyzed. If you love what you do, you will find the energy to keep going, even when things get difficult. These conversations helped me see that I was not alone. My colleagues also faced challenges, and each had their own story of overcoming them. The connection I made with them strengthened my resolve. I began to realize that even when the journey seemed daunting, I had a support network around me. Thomas and I continued to meet regularly, and with each conversation, my spirit was renewed. One day, as we were discussing possible locations for the clinic, he asked me a question that made me think deeply. Sarah, what do you hope people feel when they walk into your clinic? What is the feeling you want to convey? The answer came out of me almost instantly. I want them to feel safe, welcomed. I want them to know they are in a place where their voices are heard, where their struggles are recognized. This made me realize that my motivation was not just about professional success, but about the impact I could have on people's lives. As time passed, I began to see the emotional consequences of this turning point. I wasn't just dealing with the challenges of opening a clinic. I was facing a new version of myself. A version that accepted vulnerability, that understood that fear was part of growth. I was learning to trust myself and value the experiences that shaped my journey. Conversations with Thomas and my colleagues became fundamental. Each of them, with their stories and struggles, reminded me that life is a series of ups and downs, and that true resilience lies not in avoiding challenges, but in facing them with courage. This new perspective was changing not only the way I viewed my career, but also the way I related to the people around me. One sunny afternoon, while walking through a park, I noticed how little things started to bring joy. A child's laughter, the light breeze that caressed my face, everything seemed more vibrant. I was beginning to understand that life wasn't about achieving big milestones, but about finding beauty in the small, daily victories. And so, with every step I took towards my dream, I felt a little stronger. The journey was still full of uncertainties, but now I was willing to embrace each one. I was ready to turn my vision into reality, confident that, regardless of the outcome, I had found a new way of living and being. I had the courage to move forward, and that in itself was a victory. With every step I took towards my dream, the anxiety grew. The clinic's opening date was approaching, and the uncertainties were beginning to become an almost unbearable weight. I had planned everything so carefully, but as the day approached, I began to wonder if I could actually do this. An inner voice whispered that I could fail, that I could disappoint those who believed in me, especially Thomas. The day before the inauguration, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I stayed up all night, turning over ideas in my head. The images of the empty clinic, the lifeless reception, haunted me. What if no one showed up? What if I couldn't help people like I promised? The doubt turned into a whirlwind of emotions, and for a moment, I thought about giving up. In the middle of the night, I decided to send a message to Thomas. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I'm so scared. He quickly responded, remember why you started. The passion you have for helping people is what really matters. Tomorrow, you won't be alone. I will be there, and so will many others. His words brought some comfort, but the storm of uncertainty still raged inside me. On the morning of the opening, I arrived at the clinic before everyone else. The place was impeccable, the walls painted a soft and welcoming tone, the green plants bringing life to the environment. But instead of feeling proud, I just felt a knot in my stomach. As I waited for the first customers, my mind started to wander. I remembered all the hours I spent planning, all the conversations I had with Thomas and my colleagues. What if I failed? What would happen to my dreams? When the doors finally opened, the movement began to flow. A few people came in, and I greeted them with a nervous smile. But with each new face that approached, my heart seemed to race. Each appointment was a new opportunity, but also a new fear. What if I didn't have the answers? What if I couldn't help? And then, something unexpected happened. During one of the appointments, an older woman sat across from me. She looked so fragile, her voice shaking as she told her story. She was struggling with an all-consuming problem, and as she spoke, I saw the pain in her eyes. The fear I felt began to dissipate. The connection we made reminded me why I was there. I don't know if I can do it, but I want to try, I told her, my voice full of emotion. You are not alone. We're here together, and I will do my best to help you. At that moment, I realized that the clinic wasn't just about me or what I could or couldn't do. It was about people who needed support, someone to listen to them and help them. As the day progressed, more people passed by the clinic. Some brought their stories of pain, others of hope. I found myself involved in their lives, and with each new story, each new interaction, my confidence grew. I realized that although I had doubts and fears, what really mattered was the impact I could have on people's lives. But deep down, a part of me still struggled with the idea of failing. And as afternoon fell, an unexpected challenge arose. One of my colleagues, who was also helping at the clinic, approached me with a worried expression. Sarah, we have to talk. The scheduling system has failed and there is an error in the appointments. Some people will not be able to be served today. My heart sank. What if this led to dissatisfaction? What if people left disappointed? Panic gripped me, but I remembered Thomas's words. Facing challenges with courage is what really matters. I took a deep breath and, instead of letting my frustration get the better of me, I decided to take action. Let's figure this out together, I said, feeling a new determination rise in me. We joined our efforts and, with clear communication and empathy, we managed to overcome the situation. When the day finally came to an end, I was exhausted, but a feeling of accomplishment began to wash over me. I had faced my fears and overcome the challenge that seemed insurmountable. The clinic wasn't perfect, but it was alive, pulsing with the stories and needs of the people who entered there. At that moment, as I looked at the assembled team, the feeling of gratitude and joy invaded me. I had learned that true wealth was not in avoiding failure or having unqualified success, but in building relationships, listening and supporting others. And above all, discover the strength I had within me. That night, when I went to bed, I smiled. The journey was just beginning, but I was ready to face it head-on. The road ahead would be full of challenges, but I now knew I possessed the courage and determination needed to move forward. And with each step, I became not just a professional, but a stronger, wiser, and more connected person to the world around me. That night, as tiredness mixed with euphoria, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The day had started full of uncertainty, but now, looking back, I realized that I had overcome not only the challenge of opening the clinic, but also a part of me that was always hesitant to take risks. I felt a rush of gratitude for having faced my fears and, despite my failures, having achieved something meaningful. I remembered the stories of each patient I had treated. The older woman who spoke to me about her struggle, the young woman who sought support for her insecurities, and the father who wanted to be a better example for his children. Each of them brought their pain, but also the hope of a different tomorrow. At that moment, I realized that true success was not in having a perfect clinic, but in being a safe haven for those who needed help. The next day, when I arrived at the clinic, I found Thomas waiting for me. He had a big smile, and it made me feel like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. "You were amazing yesterday," he exclaimed. "People left satisfied, and what you did to solve the scheduling problem was admirable. I am very proud of you." His words warmed my heart, and I knew I was not alone in this endeavor. However, I also recognized that the road ahead still had its difficulties. The error in the scheduling system made me think about how I could actually improve the clinic's organization. The thought of failing again scared me, but now I understood that every mistake brings with it a learning opportunity. I started planning meetings with the team to discuss solutions and ensure that this type of situation would not happen again in the future. This attitude not only showed that I was willing to grow, but also that I valued everyone's collaboration. As the days went by, the clinic began to come to life. The walls, which were once just an empty structure, were now filled with laughter, tears, and deep conversations. I saw how essential the connection we established with patients was. When a customer walked in, they were assured they were there to be heard and supported. And as I helped others, I realized that, in some way, I was also healing myself. The lessons I learned during the inauguration began to shape the way I act. I became more empathetic and open to listening. Every conversation I had with a patient or team member helped me understand the complexity of life. I learned to value small victories and not let difficulties get me down. One day, while talking to a patient who had been through a very difficult situation, she said to me, "You are a light in such a dark time in my life. Thank you for being here." That phrase resonated within me, and I realized how impactful the work we were doing was. Friendships within the team also began to blossom. That collaboration that initially seemed like a challenge has now turned into a true bond of mutual support. Informal conversations over coffee, shared laughter during breaks, and even the occasional rant about daily difficulties brought us closer. I realized that just as I was growing, so were those around me. And that was incredible. One afternoon, while organizing some files, I received a text message from Thomas. "We are having an event at the clinic. We can invite the community to learn about our work and offer talks about mental health." Excitement grew in me. This was a chance to show that the clinic was not just a place for consultations, but a platform to promote well-being. As soon as we started planning, I realized how our ideas intertwined, and the project quickly took shape. When the event arrived, the clinic was full of people. Some came looking for help, others just to learn about our work. I felt immense pride seeing the team together, sharing their experiences and knowledge. The lectures were a success, and, at the end of the day, a feeling of accomplishment came over us all. It was as if, together, we were building something bigger than just a clinic. In the months that followed, I continued to learn and face new challenges. Each day brought its own uncertainties, but now I had a new perspective. I no longer saw obstacles as barriers, but as opportunities for growth. The confidence that I previously lacked was emerging, and I found myself more willing to take risks and innovate. I realized that, even in the midst of failures, there was always a possible fresh start. Life is full of ups and downs, and I was learning to navigate them more easily. Each story of a patient treated, each friendship built, and each event held showed me that true success was not in a perfect result, but in the journey we were sharing. And that's how, day after day, I became not only a stronger professional, but a more resilient person and aware of the power of human connection. The clinic was alive, and so was I. As the months passed, I found myself reflecting on how my life had changed since the day the clinic opened. What once seemed like a distant dream full of uncertainty had now become a pulsating reality, full of stories and connections. Each experience, each patient, and each challenge faced contributed to shaping not only the professional I was, but the person I became. I looked back and saw clearly how I had overcome my limitations. I remember when I was hesitant to expose myself, afraid of making mistakes or not being enough. Today, I realize that the vulnerability that once scared me has transformed into a powerful strength. By sharing my experiences, I found not only support, but also inspiration from others. My fears didn't disappear, but I learned to face them. With each new challenge, I felt stronger, more capable of dealing with whatever came my way. The failures I experienced, especially the one on opening day, taught me valuable lessons. Every mistake became a learning opportunity. When an appointment fell through or a patient expressed frustration, I no longer saw it as a defeat, but as a crucial time to reflect and improve. This new perspective led me to implement changes that made the clinic more efficient and welcoming. The most rewarding aspect, however, was seeing how this evolution influenced not only my work, but also the lives of the people we served. True success, I realized, was not in accumulating wealth or achieving status, but in touching lives. As I looked around me, I realized that the clinic had become a space for transformation. Every smile, every tear of relief, every thank you received showed me that we were making a difference. The stories that emerged there were much more than simple reports. They were testimonies of overcoming and hope. And with that, I learned that success would be measured by the number of lives we were able to positively impact. The wisdom acquired throughout this journey gave me a new way of seeing the world. I began to value the small moments and the beauty of human relationships. I learned that each person has a unique story and that often all they need is someone to listen. This understanding expanded my empathy, not only as a professional, but as a human being. And in each interaction, I sought not only to help, but also to learn. The life lessons I absorbed became my daily guide. I started to act with more intention and value each step of the journey, no matter how small. I believe it has made me a better therapist and, more importantly, a better person. The choices I make now are more conscious and aligned with my values. I do not seek perfection, but authenticity. The friendships I built during this time also had a profound impact on my life. The connection I developed with Thomas and my team turned into a network of unconditional support. Together, we celebrate victories and face challenges. These relationships taught me that collaboration and friendship are fundamental to our emotional health. Today, I feel surrounded by a group that not only works with me, but is also an essential support in my life. Sometimes, when looking back, I feel a rush of gratitude. Every moment of doubt, every tear shed, and every laugh shared were fundamental pieces in building who I am today. I understand that I am not just on a path of personal growth, but participating in something bigger. The clinic has become a microcosm of healing and hope, and I feel honored to be a part of it. Now, living at peace with my experiences, I have found a balance that once seemed unattainable. Each patient's story, each friendship cultivated, and each challenge overcome brought me the harmony I was looking for so much. I face the world with a new look, kinder and more open, ready to learn from the next chapters that life has in store for me. The journey I started with so much fear and insecurity is now a source of strength and inspiration. I am a transformed person, and this is not only a reflection of what I built in the clinic, but also of what I built within myself. I am more connected to the world and the people around me, and this fills me with hope for the future. Life goes on, and I am ready to embrace every moment, every challenge, and every new story that crosses my path. When I look at everything I've experienced, I feel as if I'm in a true cycle of transformation. Every experience, every challenge, and even moments of hesitation have become crucial parts of my journey. I remember the day the clinic opened, when fear and insecurity paralyzed me. Now those feelings are just distant echoes, replaced by the confidence I gained along the way. The truth is that life has taught me to be kinder to myself. I used to pressure myself so much, believing I needed to be perfect. But along the journey, I realized that imperfection is what makes us human. I learned to embrace my mistakes and see opportunities for growth in them. One day, talking to Thomas, he said to me, "What matters is not the mistake itself, but how we choose to rise up after it." These words echo in my mind whenever I face a challenge. They remind me that every fall is just a step in the right direction. The concept of success has also changed for me. Before, I thought success was having a full clinic, receiving awards, or gaining recognition. Today, I see that true success lies in small, everyday victories. A patient's smile when leaving the appointment, the gratitude expressed in a simple, "Thank you," these are the experiences that feed my soul. I believe that, by impacting someone's life, I am contributing to something much bigger than myself. The friendships I built during this journey also played a vital role in my transformation. Thomas, with his wisdom and unconditional support, became more than a colleague. He is a true friend. Our deep conversations and shared laughter showed me that we are not alone on this journey. The connection I developed with my team made each challenge easier, as we know we are together, supporting each other. The power of friendship is a force that we cannot underestimate. Reflecting on all of this, I realized that my trajectory is not just about me. Every person who crossed my path, every story shared, contributed to the person I am today. The clinic has become a sacred space where lives intertwine and transform. When I see a patient leave with renewed hope, I feel like we have accomplished our mission. Every day, I reaffirm my commitment to being a source of support and transformation in the lives of the people we serve. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I hadn't made the decision to open the clinic. It would be a life full of routines, without the excitement of connecting with such diverse people. Instead of getting caught up in the what if, I choose to focus on what I've built so far. Each challenge is an invitation to overcome, each failure an opportunity for a fresh start. And it is in this fresh start that I find my renewed strength. Now, living with this new perspective, I want to invite you to reflect on your own journey. What did you learn from your experiences? What challenges have shaped who you are today? I believe we all have stories that deserve to be told. By sharing your experiences, you can inspire others to find courage in their own struggles. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to connect. Like this content, subscribe to the channel, and join us on this journey of learning and transformation. Each interaction helps spread messages of hope and overcoming, and you are a fundamental part of this movement. Remember, your experiences and your voices are powerful. Let's share these stories together and inspire each other to embrace every challenge and every new opportunity that life presents to us. The time to act is now.